is Women's Magazine. Thanks for listening and stay with us.
Feminist women.
Mulheres feministas.
Zanone feminist.
Paniu Vaticonzero Cevacadzi.
Nessa.
Mujeres feministas.
Young Femini. On Femactivis.
Nari Mukti.
Matapang na babae. Kechimai. Ka ishk.
This week on Women's Magazine.
How does the heteropatriarchal family serve as the building block of empire? Now, to understand this question, we can now turn to the Christian right who will explain it to us.
It was very healthy, in a strange way, to go after the rape scene. I went home, I was done with the scene, I was exhausted, I felt like an empty vessel. And then the next day I came back and I punished him.
Good afternoon. I'm Kate Raphael. The international campaign for 16 days of action against gender violence is underway. And today on our show, we take 3 very different looks at violence against women and girls. We'll hear a short talk by Native American activist and scholar Andy Smith on how heteropatriarchy is used to enforce colonialism and white supremacy. And in a special contribution from our sisters at WBAI, we'll listen to a conversation with Noomi Rapace, star of the creepy gender-bending thrillers The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. You're listening to Women's Magazine on KPFA 94.1 FM and online at kpfa.org. I'm Kate Raphael. One thing the recent controversy over Pacifica and its relation to KPFA has made me aware of is what a great treasure the 5 Pacifica stations are. This next piece comes from the Women's Collective at WBAI in New York. Stieg Larsson's hit thrillers, known as the Millennium Trilogy, deal with the issue of violence against women in unusual and sometimes troubling ways. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was originally titled Men Who Hate Women. In the opening scenes of the movie adaptation, heroine Lisbeth Salander is brutally raped and then turns the tables by raping the rapist. Prairie Miller spoke with star Noomi Rapace about playing Lisbeth in the 3 movies, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and the most recent, The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. She asked her how she got into the head of such a tormented character.
I think in a way that I went back to how I felt when I was 15, 14, because I was very lost at that point and I was very angry and I didn't have so much faith in people around me and the politicians and the Swedish government and the whole society. They are very good at showing a perfect surface, a good smile. They're very diplomatic, but they're never... My opinion at that point was that they were never honest.
Did you do research about female victims of sexual violence to play one?
Both yes and no. I did a lot of research for a movie I made a couple of years before called Daisy Diamond, because I played a woman who became a prostitute. And then I did a lot of research on I met a lot of prostitutes and I met strippers, and actually many of them had been abused when they were younger. So it was pretty fresh in me, all those stories. But in a way, I wanted to use myself more and translate things from me into Lisbeth. So I didn't do so much research. I did more physical preparation, and I worked with Nils, the director, on the script. So because I had a pretty strong feeling that I had to close the world away from me, that I had to protect my work because everybody had such a strong opinions about Lisbeth. So I felt like I have to go into me and listen to myself.
What did you learn about the enduring effects of rape on women that you express in the film? Because even in this film, there may be a triumph at the end, or in other films, but you never see in other films that a person is still permanently damaged.
What I learned, I think that it was very healthy, in a strange way, to go after the rape scene. I went home. I was done with the scene. I was exhausted. I felt like an empty vessel. And then the next day I came back and I punished him. And I hurt him, and I turned all my anger and all my hate against him. And that was, in a strange way, quite good, because I think that it's very common for girls and women to turn it against themselves. That's, if somebody does something bad to you, then you start to hate yourself. You think it must be something wrong with me. Otherwise, he would never have done it. It was me who made him do it in a way. So I think that was quite interesting to feel. That I didn't think I had it in me, but I felt like, oh yeah, shut up. You have nothing more to say. Now it's my turn.
Well, speaking of which, what was the scenario that went through your head to act out what it would be like for a woman to rape a man right back?
I was so in it at that point, so I didn't reflect so much on it. I felt like he deserved it. It was, I'm using your own weapon on you, so this is how it feels.
The trilogy, more so than the book than in the films, is very much about right-wing extremist trends and the economic elite in Sweden. And the left-wing author Larson of the series was said to have been hounded and driven to his death by the Swedish right wing. How would you describe the connection in the films? I mean, even though you're not the director, but how would you describe the connection in the films between economics, politics, and sexual violence?
I think that Stig Larsson was a very brave, hardworking journalist. He was political. I think he wanted to change the society, and he was working against. He wanted to bring up the subject, the legacy of the Nazis, and everything that we in Sweden didn't want to talk so much about. I think that he wanted to bring up all those dirty things up into the light and force people to admit and to see, we have this in this perfect country. Look, do something. And I think he did it in a very smart way, because he wrote those books. Because when he was a working journalist, he was not so popular. People didn't know him. He was not a successful big journalist. He had sometimes hard times. He had a price on his head. He was under threat. He probably went through pretty difficult times in his life. And then he wrote those books. And I think that he, in a very smart way, managed to put in all those things that he wanted to talk about, but do it in a very entertaining and a very clever way, so it gets to you, even though you're not aware of that it's political.
Well, do you think he was trying to draw some connection between sexual violence and politics, or was that just a dramatic?
Yeah, but it's absolutely connected. Just a couple of months ago, the big Swedish police chief, they discovered that he have raped women, he have bought sex, he have sold sex. He was actually like a pimp. He was so down to so many dirty things. So it's unbelievable. The Swedish chief, police chief, the one who's, deciding, he's the big boss. And he is just the dirtiest, the most disgusting, like a demon. So, and I don't know, maybe Stig Larsson have seen into the police force in Sweden or something. It's almost like a movie, So actually, I think that he knew that it's power. When people get too much power, they can lose connection with reality, and I think that money and greedy and power can really turn you into something that is not so beautiful.
What about your variety of physical appearances in the film? Did you have any input into putting those together, and what were you trying to express through them physically?
I knew that I wanted to change my body and my everything, pretty much, because I knew what Lisbeth was. I saw her in my head, and I knew that I wanted to become more boyish, more masculine, I wanted to get rid of my female body And I wanted to wake up my aggressive side, so I trained a lot of kickboxing and Thai boxing for 5 days a week for 7 months. And I did all those piercings, and I cut my hair, and I took motorcycle driving license because I wanted to do my stunts. I wanted to do everything as far as was possible, and because I think everything is connected. You know, you can always tell by a person's body what they have gone through. So it's like I have to program my own body into Lisbeth's body if I'm playing Lisbeth. Because I think you can see how a person enters a room. That tells so much about the person, you know. How does she move? How does she look? How is her shoulders? You know, how does she look at people and all that? And I know that if you do a physical preparation, it can help you. It can guide you into her universe, you know.
So you had a lot of input into that.
Yes, absolutely. It was me. I wanted to do it. Nobody else.
Credit for that.
Yeah.
What about the costume?
Yeah, we worked on it. I worked, on everything. The costume, the dialogue, the script, the makeup, my tattoos. I was, the way Lisbeth's apartment looked like, everything. I was involved in everything.
Now, you've been quoted as saying, I'm interested in people's darker sides, the cracks. Why is that?
I think I'm obsessed with the human psyche. I think it's so interesting trying to understand why people do certain things and how is it possible. When I did this film in Denmark called Daisy Diamond, the one about the prostitute, the woman who turns into a prostitute, she kills her baby, and I wanted to understand how is that possible. Do I have it in me? Is it, because I want to understand, and I want to. It's like it's such a taboo in Sweden, and nobody wants to talk about it, and it happens. Mothers kill, their babies, and it's so difficult to understand, but I want to understand. I want to try at least. So all my work is always. I think it's so much more interesting to try to look into something that is complicated, that you have to dig in. You have to really force yourself to area in yourself when you don't really know what's true and not, and what's good and evil and all that. And I think that life is sometimes pretty hard, and it's not always a romantic comedy. It's much more. So I want, movies to be reflecting reality.
And you've also said we need more extreme movies in Sweden.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I think that the Swedish film industry have been so polite for many years, and people are making movies. They are so concerned, and they are so anxious, and they are trying to make movies that people will like, and that people that they want to have their money back. They want a big audience. They want all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's possible to make a movie if that's the goal. So when I said that, I mean, like, come on, we have to tell more personal stories. We have to have the courage to do films that are actually exploring something, and because otherwise everything will just be lukewarm.
And that was Noomi Rapace talking about The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. And her next project is Guy Ritchie's sequel to Sherlock Holmes. This is Prairie Miller.
The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest is currently playing at the Piedmont and the Albany Twin in the East Bay and at the Clay in San Francisco. Thanks to Prairie Miller and WBAI's Women's Collective for that entertaining interview. For today, thanks to Priti Mangala Shekhar and Yvette Hochberg for their work on this show, and also to Prairie Miller at WBAI for the interview with Noomi Rapace, and to our friends at Making Contact for the Andrea Smith Talk. I'm Kate Raphael. We'd love to hear your feedback on the show, as well as your thoughts on what you'd like to hear on our show in the future. You can reach us by email at kpfawomensmag@gmail.com. You can hear any individual segments you missed, as well as our archived shows on our blog, kpfawomensmag.blogspot.com, and we also have links there to all of our guests.